Hello again. Yes, it's back for video number 20. Now, this is a great question and a very apt one in our current world of constant change. It's from Nick Williams, who's a senior manager, people consulting at EY, and he asks, what's the best way to run a program of change in an environment that is absolutely fatigued with multiple, multi-year programs, constant communications, and teams that really don't care anymore? I've got to say, I've got my work cut out to get this one into a short video, but hey, in the words of John Wayne, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. First of all, what is change fatigue? Change fatigue is an organisational affliction that results from management-led initiatives. It can surface when management introduces too many changes in a short period of time. Unfortunately, this is a consequence of our time, and there is probably no way of getting away from the fact that we have to live with constant change and the consequence of it. So, how do you recognise change fatigue? To keep it simple, I'll go through three main signs. Okay, sign number one. Let's start with change resistance. This can be team members who insist that every change is a bad idea, even before they know what the change is all about. They say things like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The telling shrug of the shoulders, the observation that everything already works fine. Why change it? Because we've always done it that way, that favourite phrase. But there are more overt displays of change resistance, which include things like a blatant refusal to implement changes or actively lobbying and canvassing against the change. For every comment you hear or action you see that expresses or demonstrates change resistance, chances are there are several more covert ones. This army of doubters can sabotage the success of any change initiative, and their generals, the overt ones, are some of the most influential. Next up, poor performance. High instances of things like sick leave, high turnover, long break times, poor productivity, or a decline in quality outcomes are all examples of poor performance. If these symptoms appear as you're implementing change in your organisation, you can bet your bottom dollar on the fact that your team are struggling with the change. They just might not be telling you about it. When change fatigue manifests itself in poor performance, it's often because your team hasn't been effectively involved in the change process. They may feel that they weren't consulted, they may not fully understand the why behind the change, or they may not have the tools or skills for operating in the new environment. And finally, confusion. This could exist because your team members don't understand the change, or because you don't understand it yourself. That's a good one. After all, if you don't understand it yourself, if you don't understand the change yourself, how can you explain it to your people? Quite difficult, I would argue. Albert Einstein once said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And this applies to organisational change and is one of my many mantras. Okay, well, that's fine. What do you do about it? So let me give you a few things that I think you should do and I would recommend. Number one, be aware and understand change fatigue and how it manifests itself. Number two, communicate regularly the reasons why change is required. Yes, even though people are fed up with too much communication. Formulate long-term strategy plans rather than relying on short-term reactive solutions. If possible, try to limit the number of changes and focus on small improvements rather than top-down large-scale transformations. Next, highlight the previous change initiatives that have led to improvements. This is always a good motivator. Accept that a reduction in performance or productivity is inevitable because changes are disruptive and will usually involve extra work, even if the changes are designed to reduce workload over the longer period of time. Next up, change doesn't have to be imposed from the top because employees are experts in their job. So involve them, yeah? Involve them in the process of change. You never know, their suggestions may even be more realistic and acceptable to the workforce in general. So listen to their concerns and take them seriously. Remember that change places an enormous burden on people, on managers as well, who are required to sell the new initiatives to their staff, even if they personally disagree with them. So train them on how to better support staff through the process of change. Remember that it may take a while for change to be accepted or to reap any benefits. So for any change initiative at work, a period of consolidation is required to allow the changes to bed in. Finally, evaluate the long-term effectiveness of any change initiative by asking staff at each level, of the organisation to provide feedback so lessons can be learned. Finally, it's important to consider what I call the BPS effect. B equals behavioural. That's the way people perform their work. P equals psychological, the way people relate to and regard their work. And S equals social, the relationship among those involved and between them and their organisation. So at the end of the day, it's all about how you treat your people. The effect change has on people must be considered and dealt with positively because their feelings and their attitudes are critical to the successful implementation of change. So just feel. F is for fear that have to be dealt with, fears that have to be dealt with realistically. E is for expectations that need to be managed. E is for everybody who has needs that should be met. And L is for loss, which is a part of change and needs to be actively addressed. Okay? And not forgetting, people react to change in different ways. There's a stability orientated person, who finds that circumstances are changing quite rapidly, whereas a change orientated person finds that everything is the same and nothing is new. Both will display a negative attitude towards each other, with preferences at the other end of the spectrum, such as distrust, dislike, and suspicion. Individual feelings and attitudes are critical to the successful implementation of change. So, knowing how to overcome a person's natural resistance to change will enable you and your team to implement change more effectively, minimize the negative effects on performance, and optimize your chances of success. That's it again. Thanks for listening, and let's see what the next question brings. Oh, it's not quite finished. I need some more questions, okay? I'm running out of questions. My pipeline is diminishing. So if you can think of any question related to change, please send it to me. I'll put my contact details below this video, okay? So please send in questions. I'm really looking forward to answering more. Thanks again for listening.